Well, hello everyone. How you doing out there? Welcome to this week's Snippets micro message. My name is Margaret Burk with the Gate Church, and I'm so glad that you could join me on this Monday night. So, got a lot to unpack. I'm going to try and make it quick. Just really was inspired by this weekend. We had a conference at the Gate Church. Our pastor, Louis D. Sienna, coupled with a speaker, Todd Bentley, and accessing the heavenly realms. It just was so much that. And so that was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they were just so packed. I'm personally in the process of unpacking some of that. But in that time span, and because we do have at the Gate, it's an apostolic and prophetic foundation church, and so with that, in my prophetic walk, I learned certain things prophetically and how to minister using proper protocols for the prophetic. So that's what I'm going to kind of base this snippet on and just give you some guidelines that I had learned and that kind of came up during this conference and were handled so very well. So it'll be helpful for you if you are someone who travels to different churches, who, because, we're a church that we believe in cross-pollination. We believe in getting, going to other fellowships and hearing what other people are sharing and really gleaning off of them. We're the body, and we're supposed to have every joint supplying, and so we're not an island to ourselves. And so with that being said, we bring in guest speakers. We also go to conferences. Even as senior leaders, we do this quite often. And or have done it quite often. Me, not so much. Just recently started really feeling like I was called to get back out and start traveling a little bit more. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, I'm excited about that. So, but with that being said, some of the proper protocols for the prophetic. So, Acts 2 does tell you that God has poured out his spirit upon all flesh, that sons and daughters may prophesy, and we got dreams, have visions, and so everyone has that prophetic ability, but not everybody's called to an office or a gifting as a prophet. And so there's a distinction. That's not what I'm going to talk about today. So what I do want to talk about is if you're getting a word from the Lord, in other words, you're receiving it to give it, there are some honoring protocols that we established at the Gate Church and also are good tools to use if you go to other churches, so that because there are so many different types of ways people feel that you can release the prophetic. Okay, so I know that in some meetings we had people who thought that as the Spirit came upon you and gave you utterance, you would break out with your prophetic utterance and give a word in the middle of a session. And so I'm going to kind of address this. So basically, when I started learning about the prophetic, Lewis started teaching about the principles, and I was brand new. I had no grid at all, religious grid, no grid. So I was kind of this fresh slate, which Lewis was always very excited about because I didn't have to unlearn things. I didn't have to unlearn doctrine. I didn't have to, go, hey, I was taught this way and now I'm seeing it this way. And sometimes that trips a lot of people up. So anyway, I just everything was coming to me for the very first time. So when I learned the prophetic, which by the way, I had absolutely zero boldness, absolutely zero confidence, absolutely did not know what I was doing. And I am pretty much an introvert. I'm not pretty much, I am an introvert. And I don't have an outgoing personality. In other words, I am not the person that is going to be the one that stands out in the crowd. And especially when I was brand new Christian, because I had no idea what, especially the prophetic, was all about. I just knew that it was God and that it lined up scripturally. So when I started learning, one of the things that we did learn were some protocols on giving a word. So even when at the very beginning I was very insecure about it, I was very insecure about my gifting. And so with practice and with a really good, close uh, uh, network, I would say. I don't like to use the word network. Family and friends, and of course, Lewis was my father in the Lord, still is my father in the Lord. He would train and teach and have that place of safety, like correction and hey, not quite right, or maybe tweak it a little bit, so you become aware and you are able to deliver with confidence the word that you're getting. And that comes with over time. As you utilize your gift, it comes easier and easier. But at the very beginning, boy, it's difficult. And he would also use a microphone. Like, we'd have to talk into a microphone, and that already was enough to go, wow, you want to talk in front of a microphone, let alone talk in front of people in a microphone. So we had little safe places. Like, we'd come in small little groups and we would do prophetic activations, which I highly recommend if you are learning to activate the prophetic in your church. And just little safe places, have somebody who is a prophet to be able to help and guide and direct them, because that's what prophets do. They're part of the fivefold ministry gifts given unto men, given unto the saints, actually, to the church, to equip them, to perfect them, I like to use, for works of ministry, so partly. So anyway, I learned all of this just gradually, and one of the things that I learned as far as a protocol is, if you get something, and we used to do these activations where we would just pray in the Spirit. Pray in the Spirit, pray in the Spirit, pray in the Spirit, which is a really good tool when you're starting out, because it gets you out of the mindset of, all the things that are going on through the day, and gets you into the Spirit. And then you can start hearing. And, Lewis used to say, sometimes you got to dig deeper. So you might get something, he calls that surface water, because then you got to go back down into the well and dig a little deeper prophetically, just pray in the Spirit even more. And you might get just an idea, or a fragrance, or a color, or just one thing, and you just take that and set it on a shelf, and then you dive back in deeper. And that is such a great tool to use. And so we would learn all these things, and we would hone each other. We would hone our gifts, and then we would practice on each other, which Lewis does a School of the Prophets. I'm not sure if he's doing another one. He does incremental teachings. But it was such a great way to get people activated in the prophetic. So that is a good way to start. But if you are going into another church, or going to a conference in another location, and you feel like you may get a word that you need to share, one of the best ways is to approach somebody on leadership who has the authority and say, if I get a word from the Lord, if I get a prophetic word, what are your protocols? Find that out, because each church may have a different way they deliver. Some churches may have, hey, this is where we release prophetically. So anything, it's no holds barred. Or we don't release prophetic words in the middle of the meeting. Hold on to it until the appropriate time, and then bring it to maybe somebody in the leadership or a designated person and share it with them. And if they know you well, if they know your gifting, you've been in part of the church, or you've been there before, and they understand how you hear, they may just say, okay, go ahead and release the word. But a lot of times you may just want to share that with them and have them judge the word. Nothing wrong with that. And they may say, yes, go ahead and share it, or they may say, thank you for giving that to us. Just finding out their protocols, because it's precious that you get the word of God, but you're not going to release it out of, and I'm going to say this very, very gently, out of order, because things should be done in order. Because, and I'm not talking about that religious order. I'm just talking about an honoring order so that your word can be heard. A lot of times, like in our church, we may have prophetic times. Like, okay, we're going to minister prophetically. Go pray for somebody. If you get a word, release it, and then if you receive that word, write it down. And if you're not sure about it, bring it to one of us. Bring it to one of us and we'll talk about it. Because we really believe in activating people. We don't expect everybody to be perfect, especially when you're just trying this out. Now, we also instruct, do not, and I wrote them down so I didn't forget them. There are things that we do not like having released unless you're an ordained prophet or an ordained minister. And that is, there are 5 areas that we ask people to stay away from when they're giving somebody a word when we have a prophetic time. And it's one of them is fivefold ministry callings. In other words, saying you've been called as an apostle or you've been called as a pastor. Okay, we don't do that unless you are ordained prophet. And then we don't release mates or dates. In other words, you're going to get married to so-and-so, or you're going to get married this year, or dates, specific timelines. Oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that in a certain timeline. Geographic locations. In other words, hey, I see you're going to move to, Africa, you're going to pack up and leave. No geographic location changes. And babies. And we just ask you to stay away from those areas unless you're ordained. And really, I'm ordained, and I do not give a lot of those words unless I am really pretty sure. I mean, I'll step out in faith, and Lewis also taught us this, stepping out in faith, you got to kind of test the water, but let the person know, hey, I'm really not sure about this, but what I'm hearing is this, so I could be 50-50. Please pray about it, take it to somebody, let them know. I mean, prophetic words should not they should not be hidden. They need to be judged by the prophet. And when you're just launching out, like getting names and getting dates and all of those things, even as an ordained prophet, you may not want to just say, thus saith the Lord. You might say, hey, I'm getting this and you may want to check this out. I'm going to push the envelope just a little bit, but this is what I'm hearing. You understand what I'm saying? Because these things they're very heavy and can be very detrimental if they're not delivered properly. And, these are life-changing events. So those are some protocols that we use. So number 1, make sure you go to the person of authority, someone who has authority to make this call of, hey, I've got this word. How do you want me to deliver it? Writing down a word is always good. Like over the weekend, I got somebody gave me a prophetic word and they wrote it down while I was in the middle of worship. And let me tell you, this is something I personally, when we're in worship and prayer, and when I say prayer, I mean ministering to the Lord and really focusing on God, not ministry to each other, ministering to the Lord. When we have that time of prayer, even corporate prayer, I really am reluctant about having people come up and give words, because it draws your attention away from the reason why you're there. You're there to communicate with God, okay? Same thing with worship. You're there to worship the Lord. And so we ask in our church not to deliver these words unless maybe they're in writing and set them down for them so that they can read them at a better time, right? So because we don't want them interrupted or disengaged, distracted. So those are some protocols that we use. And then also staying away from those 5 areas of delivering them unless you're an ordained prophet. And even then, you might want to just make sure that you let them know I'm 50-50, or this could be, just get it checked out. Do not, and lastly, do not be, don't be concerned about it being judged. that's our learning. That's how we navigate. That's how we learn that we're hearing from the Lord correctly and rightly, right? So it's all training. And as we utilize this gifting even more, you'll learn what is God and what isn't necessarily. Because honestly, when I first started, I was like, I'm hearing the color blue. It's just that basic. Here's another little tidbit that I have learned is that sometimes you might get a word, and maybe there's this time where you are able to deliver, like we're having a prophetic prayer time, so you're going to turn to somebody there, or God may have said, I need to give this person a prophetic word when it's open, because we do that a lot in our church. Hey, go pray for somebody here in the room, and something may come to mind. Something may come in your spirit, and you go, oh, okay. So you'll go over there, and all you're hearing is like one or two words. And it's funny because you could say, I just heard this one or two words over you, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, as soon as you remove the cork, as soon as you start to say, more will come out. It's almost like uncorking a bottle of champagne. It's like you pop the cork and it rushes out, or priming the pump. A little bit, and then all of a sudden there's more that follows. It's like, whoa, I didn't even expect to say all that, So these are some little tidbits and helps and protocols, so that when you go to other churches, when you go to conferences, that you have a place, that you have an honoring spirit. So I'm a prophet, or I'm prophetic, and I've got the word of the Lord. And when you have that attitude, it's pretty puffed up. And you need to submit your words to the authority of the church, because they're the ones who's going to have to clean up the mess, and and really be the people that they bounce it off of. And so those are just very gentle reminders of some protocols to give prophetic words outside of your church. You should know what they are at your church. And so I hope you found that helpful. I know that I was very, very pleased this weekend when we had some prophetic releases and how they were handled. And it can be disheartening when you do it wrong, or you submit it and they go, no, this is not the time. But keeping that humble heart of humility and just knowing that is okay. I did my part. I gave it to the person that, of authority, and said, hey, I've got this to release. And it's up to them to say, this is probably not the time. Sometimes you can tell, even being that person in authority, and maybe you haven't open, go, yeah, if you get a word, we're going to release it. There are some timings of the Lord. It's like sometimes when the Spirit is ebbing and flowing, you don't want to give that word on gravel. It's just kind of like, there's no anointing on it. Times may have passed. And that's really left up to the person that you've submitted it to. So I know that's a whole little extra there, but it's all good. I hope that you gained some helpful tools with this. I know that they have worked for us, and I know they've worked for me personally, and always keeping that place of honor is primary. So those are just some keys and pointers. I hope that you enjoyed them. And I guess until next time, bye for now, and we will see you next week. God bless.